safeguarding against, bandits who might be trying to break into your businesses, very, very important. And it's basically the same tips as if you were safeguarding your home, right? So the first thing we'll talk about is locking your doors. I'm sure as responsible business owners, you do that at the end of the day when you're leaving. The second thing would be access points and having really sound quality locking devices such as deadbolts, and that they're installed properly. Curtains to prevent people, or blinds to prevent people from looking into your businesses, can be used. Proper lighting and motion sensors will certainly deter illicit activity in and around your business or property. The next thing is, if you're going away for a length of time, to connect lighting to automatic timers that will turn them on and off. And I know this isn't rocket science, you guys, and as business owners, you may be doing some of those things already. The other thing is, when you're away for an extended period of time, consider contacting Canada Post, even the Daily Press, if you're receiving mail at your business. You just don't let it build up in the mailbox. Checking your locks on your doors and windows, and once again, making sure they're in good working condition, replacing them with secure devices as necessary. And then the last tip would be like hardening the target, so to speak, so that the risk of being seen or caught is greater and will likely cause your business or the petty thief to move on to an easier target, which includes surveillance cameras, alarm systems, and possibly window gates across some of your windows to your business.
So our mobile crisis team, they're teamed up with the nurses, psychology nurses up from TDH. They've been in operation for about a year now. So that's a program that just came up about a year ago. It took about 6 months to get things up and running, to get MOUs in place and get kind of the structure in place. They've been up and running for about a year, and we're reviewing everything that takes place there. As far as mental health calls go, it seems like our calls for service are trending upwards, but those are numbers that we're going through right now. We're analyzing what we have and how things have gone so far. Although those numbers are going up, again, anecdotally, the program seems to be very well received. They're providing better service to our members of our community in relation to mental health crisis. We're trying to bring down the level of crisis so we don't flood emergency crisis calls, and rather our officers and the mental health nurses get out to deal with the mental health illness prior to it becoming a crisis. Again, it's been very well received. We're seeing how things go going forward. One of the officers, Constable Tombo, won't be involved in that unit come January, but his successor has already been identified and is undergoing the training, so they're off and running come January when Mike is not available there any longer. Additionally, we had our community safety officers that were out there in that as well, our SOX officers, Street Outreach and Community Safety. Those officers have been somewhat rebranded for coming in January. They're going to be looking mainly at property crimes. In their place, or to augment what the work that they were doing, we have a new program that's just kind of getting off the ground and running now. We're starting to establish it as of the start of this month, and that's our addictions outreach. It's going to be branded differently, but their main purpose is to go out and speak with the people that need to be connected with resources as in regards to opioid addiction, and trying to get them into some of the treatment pathways that will better serve kind of some of the problems that have been plaguing us with opioid addictions, overdoses, and such. So those officers, there's 2 officers that have been selected. They're going to be working 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for about an 11, 12-hour shift every day. And they're ultimately going to be going out. You're going to see them walking on the streets in our downtown core, a lot of our hotspot problem areas for drug consumption. And they're ultimately going to be plucking people off the street, engaging them, seeing if they're viable candidates for treatment programs, and trying to connect them directly with treatment programs in order to kind of resolve that problem. So they're not in our justice system, or they're not causing any other problems throughout our downtown core. but they're going to be focusing strictly on, again, engagement on people with addictions of some nature, and trying to get them into those treatment plans. Along with those are our street outreach and community safety officers that were typically dealing with those problems before. They're going to be strictly doing property crimes and other related things. Our break and enters, theft from vehicles, thefts in general. Again, not specifically for the downtown core, but they're going to be out there in our community wherever those problems arise and address those. It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So they have a schedule that they're going to work during the course of the day. Again, 11, 12 hours per day through the heart of, we did an analysis of the calls for our mental health calls, when they're coming in and when the most appropriate time to have them working. So we've got it 11 in the morning till 10:30 at night. So that's when they work. Saturdays, Sundays, whatever the case may be, very similar to what the outreach workers are working as well. So ultimately, there's an outreach worker that has a little bit of overlap. They start a little earlier. They start at 7 and they go till 6 o'clock. And then our mobile crisis will go till 10:30. Yeah, so as far as members of the public or the business community, whoever calls in, if you have problems with your businesses or some suspicious activity that takes place out there, it's calling in the same avenues as before. We just have more resources in the background that we can leverage to trying to deal with some of these problems and some of the ways that we can resolve them, to see them right through to the end, rather than just relying on referrals and things like that. So if the call comes in that we're going to attend, officers on the road know these resources that we have within our police service, and they can call them up. The mobile crisis, like I said, we haven't done the complete analysis on the calls and stuff like that. We know that, again, we've heard a lot of testimonials. We've heard that it's been very well received. Our outreach workers in that as well. In a very short amount of time, they've had a number of successes already, and we're expecting very similar results with them. Again, it'll be seen in the future, but it's already having benefits where we've had a number of people that we've been able to connect to resources, get them off the street, get them into housing, and get them the treatment that they need so that they're staying clean. So everything seems to be going in the right direction.
The Vulnerable Persons Registry, that's something we've actually been working on for several months now. And unfortunately, because of COVID and stuff, things kind of got pushed back a little bit, but we were actually able to do a soft launch, a little media thing, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. So this is something that I actually personally had a vested interest in it, because I did a little bit of research on it, as well as one of our officers, Constable Darin. And we were collaborating with other police agencies, Sudbury mostly, because they had this up and running for a little bit of time. And we felt that here in Timmins, we were more and more dealing with vulnerable type people, especially missing person calls, that kind of stuff. So we did develop a policy. It is up and running right now. We have actually 3 individuals that have been already registered with the police agency. So if we compare it to a police service like Sudbury, we're hoping to have 40 to 50 registrants. That's kind of what I'm expecting that we'll see. It's going in the right direction, and we're slow moving, but we're getting there. So the vulnerable person, just to give you a little bit of highlight. So it includes individuals that due to, like you mentioned a while ago, mental, medical, health, physical condition, cognitive disabilities. What this does is it would provide us with some information that would tell us or give us information pertaining to our missing people. If they're vulnerable people, what are their tendencies? How is it best to communicate with these individuals? Are they fascinated with things like water or heavy traffic or stuff like that? Anything that will help us speed our investigation, because when we're dealing with these people, time is of essence, and we need that information at our fingertips. So what we've done is if you go on our website, you'll see a section that deals with Vulnerable Persons Registry. People are invited to go on that. They can register themselves if they're capable of doing that. A parent can do it, a guardian can do it. We have an identified officer that will receive that information, will ensure that all the information that we require as a police is on that. It has been filled out. We need things like photographs, that kind of stuff. All that information is shared with all of our partners. Paramedics, that kind of stuff. It stays on a website. It's analyzed on a yearly basis. People can at any time, if they choose to remove themselves or remove somebody, they can certainly do that. Although if they're still residing in our community, we would encourage people to leave that individual on there. So yeah, so far it's been working. It's been working well. We're seeing an increase. We're hoping to get more, and we'll just kind of see what the future holds for us. So this registry falls hand in hand with everything else that we kind of do here as a policing agencies, and we're working with our partners in community mental health, that kind of stuff. So I think for sure there is a stigma. There's no doubt about it. I'm hoping we're breaking some barriers and certainly going in the right direction. What we were noticing here in Timmins is we're getting more and more, and I'm not just going to say it's international students, but certainly becoming more diverse in a lot of different languages and stuff. So we really didn't have a one-stop shop that we can go to. So if we encounter somebody on the street or somebody's coming to the building and they need some assistance, from time to time we do have some language barriers. So we did some research. We signed off with a company out of California, of all places, and they're actually called Language Line Solutions. And they cater to other policing agencies like Calgary Police, Vancouver Police, just to name a few. It's a language. So what they're called language solutions, interpreter services that are available in more than 240 languages, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So basically, Timmins Police has a dedicated telephone line that if we require their assistance, we call this one number, and they know in California it's coming from Timmins Police Service. So all of our officers have received some information. And I'll just kind of show you a little pamphlet of what they have. I'm talking about, it's 240 different languages. So I don't know if you can see, but yeah, so our officers, so if we encounter somebody who we can't communicate with, we would provide this pamphlet, and hopefully they'll recognize the writing, and they'll be able to point to us what language they speak. So once we identify that, we would put the call in. It's a 1-844 number directly into California, and then we would advise them we need an interpreter that speaks Korean or Punjabi or French or whatever the case may be. So we can offer our citizens or anybody who's in Timmins that direct information, that direct contact with us, and certainly be able to help them out a lot sooner than trying to struggle to find out, okay, who can we get in our community that can come and help us out? And that was kind of the old way, if we're pretty limited within our organization, but with this, it's certainly going to help us out for sure.
I wanted to take a couple of minutes to touch on Bill C-75, and I have a Facebook account, and I read the Facebook posts from some concerned members, not only in the chamber possibly, but across the city, people in the community saying that if only the police could hang on to them. Why do they keep releasing these people only to reoffend a second time? And I'm sure it's frustrating as a property owner, as a member of this community, to oftentimes see the same names coming back up when Mark DePazzi, our communications coordinator, is putting those media releases out. So what I wanted to do is take a few moments, and this is just a little bit of a very high level snapshot as it relates to Bill C-75, what it means to the police, and what the legislative changes were, which now we're required to follow. So I'll just walk you through this a little bit. And, for Darin and Rick, if you guys want to chime in or offer your own opinions on it, then we can do that as well. So going back, the Ministry of the Attorney General, Mel, and the Ministry of the Community Safety and Correctional Services, which is now called, it's been rebranded to the Ministry of the Solicitor General, commissioned a report on bail and remand that was released in early 2017. And that report is called the Wyant Report. And the report recognized that too many accused were on remand awaiting a bail determination, and set out a bunch of recommendations to improve the bail and remand in Ontario. So they took a look at it and said, yeah, there's far too many people that are in that transitional period of waiting for trial or waiting for someone, another form of release. So what they did is they created Bill C-75, and I'll touch on some of those things. So the expansion of the education for police and their powers of release were highlighted. So what we know now, because of Bill C-75, and that came into effect in December of 2019, and I stand to be corrected by Darin or Rick, but I'm fairly confident that's what it was. The decision of whether or not to release an accused person pending trial and on what conditions is one of the most significant decisions made in the criminal process. And that was highlighted in Bill C-75. And the decision making starts with us, because we have hands-on of that accused person. We make the arrest, and then it's up to my staff, the men and women of the service, to make that decision whether or not they're going to hold for a bail hearing or release. And I'll get to it. So there's now a new principle of restraint. And it's right here. It came into force December 18th, 2019. So there's been amendments to the Criminal Code of Canada, and that's basically the Bible for the police. We have to follow everything that's in the Criminal Code. So now Section 493, subsection 1, is worded this way: a peace officer, so a police officer, shall give primary consideration to the release of the accused at the earliest reasonable opportunity and on the least onerous conditions that are appropriate in the circumstances. So what's that basically telling us? Unless there is really exigent circumstances and reasons why we can articulate why we need to hang on to that accused person, we must, and I'm going to repeat that, we must release from custody at our level. So the second change came with Aboriginal accused and vulnerable populations. So the criminal code now says that a peace officer shall give particular attention to the circumstances of an Aboriginal accused and accused who belong to a vulnerable population that is overrepresented in the criminal justice system and that is disadvantaged in obtaining releases. So that could be people afflicted with addictions of any type, people suffering from mental illness, to name a few. There's a legal presumption that an accused will be released from custody on a release order without any conditions at all. So it's presumed. You get arrested, once again, I'm going to repeat it, from the criminal justice system's eyes, everybody should be released, and it's our job to articulate the reasons why we're not releasing that person. So the responsibility for the release is primarily on the police to establish whether or not that's going to be done. So then they talk about who should be released. For the most offenses, the starting point is that the accused person should be released, whether by the police or. So I'm not going to speak to the legal requirements of the justices of the peace who hear these issues day in, day out. They have a set criteria that they have to maintain as well. And so does the Defense Counsel and the Crown Attorney's Office. So one other point is it says it's not practical or legal. So I need to emphasize that, or legal, to hold everyone in an effort to guarantee that an accused person will not reoffend. So we talked about that. So we can't, and that's, I think, one of the biggest changes. We can't just automatically say, you know what, I think John might reoffend, so we're going to hang on to him. Criminal Code now says that's not accurate anymore. You shall consider releasing the person unless some very serious grounds are not met by that accused person, right? Talks about who should be released and avoid passing the buck, right? So what basically that tells us, or at the police service, is don't just hold people to bring them before the courts in front of a justice of the peace where the circumstances don't dictate that person's staying in custody. So once again, the emphasis back on the police to do what's right and release these people from custody. So there's a presumption again under Section 498 of the Criminal Code that all persons shall be released. If a person has not been taken before a justice of the peace or otherwise been released, the officer must release that person as soon as practicable. Some of the times we'll release those people on a release with conditions. So, and I'll give you a couple of examples. You know, the justice of the peace will release them and say, okay, you must keep the peace and be a good behavior. Sometimes they'll institute curfews. On our side of the house, the real emphasis here is under 493.1 of the code is that the conditions should be realistic, right? We never had to consider that before. Now we do. The accused should be able to comply with the conditions that are set out by the justice of the peace or by the police. For example, a condition requiring a homeless or mentally ill person to report to the police weekly or monthly may be virtually impossible for them to comply with. So we have to consider that. While before, quite frankly, it was, we thought, yeah, that person's going to report. And if you were in violation of that, we would charge them for failing to comply with the release orders. And then the second thing is to consider whether an alcohol or drug prohibition is necessary. So we used to see that, you know, in my time here, many times. You must abstain from the consumption or purchase of alcohol and illicit drugs. And what it says now is it will likely be impossible for an addict to comply with such a condition. So once again, very high level, but the importance there is for you guys to understand that we must follow the criminal code and what the new conditions of release and bail are. And we have to do it because the federal government made the changes to the legislation. We must follow that. So this isn't an attempt to pass the buck back on to the prime minister or the federal government. It's just simply sharing a little bit of information with everybody on the call. And hopefully you can understand it now through our eyes a little bit. I think the more violent the crime, Mel, the easier it would be on the police to give reasons why we're going to hold that person. If also, and we spoke about this a little earlier, Darin and I, so if there's someone from out of town that gets arrested in our community, the first thing that we have to look at is whether or not we believe there'll be a continuation of the offense. So in an act of violence, if there's not, that person gets released. The second thing would be compelling that person to court. So, you know, where you have someone from outside the community commit crimes and you know darn well that that person is going to go back and it's a serious enough offense, then you can hold that person in custody to await a bail hearing. And then at the bail hearing, you know, that's up to the lawyers to discuss whether or not their clients or from a Crown's perspective, whether or not they feel that it's required. And then the justice of the peace can make that determination.
Now, I don't know if this is maybe too much to ask this question, but I thought I would anyway. When we think about who is being arrested, do we have a specific demographic that's more of a, you know, popular, or are we seeing it is everybody, or is it mostly, as we've talked about, maybe individuals that are living homeless from outside of the community? What are we seeing in terms of who is being arrested?
Although we, you know, really don't like to do a deep dive into demographics, I can tell you, you know, traditionally the ratio of men-women is probably more on the male side that are getting arrested, but we don't look at it that way. We simply arrest the people we have to, depending on the calls for service. You know, I will dispel a myth that's out there, and again, thanks to Facebook for this, that most of the problems in and around downtown area are done by the homeless people, and the homeless people make up the majority of the arrests. That's false. That's absolutely false. And you know, even on the opioid side, that the people, unfortunately, who have died over this past calendar year since January are homeless people. There's no truth to that. Darin provided some statistics on that, where we saw you know, for the first, I think we analyzed it maybe the first 9 months, Mel, on that, is that, you know, of the 22 deaths that we thought were as a result of opioid overdoses, only one person had no fixed address. So what's that tell us, right? We've heard the concerns from the downtown BIA members and the community at large, and we've done, I think, a very good job at throwing resources to the downtown, especially when right in the middle of the summer, when traditionally I have the least amount of staff working because everybody wants the summer off. But we undertook to reorganize the organization a little bit, and we threw a bunch of bodies to the downtown area. I can't say one way or another whether it led to arrests. I did get some really good feedback from certain members of the BIA over the summer that it seemed to, you know, create an atmosphere for the members of the BIA of, now we're seeing the police, they're a little bit more visible. Rick from his side instructed his staff sergeants to ensure that when we could, that sixth person, let's say, who was working on that day, or seventh person or eighth person, were assigned to the beat in the downtown area. And don't forget, we also like to, it's not just the immediate area of the BIA, they were walking the beat at times over in the Timmins.CARE. And then we can't forget about South Porcupine as well, downtown South Porcupine. So we tried that. The street crime officers were also out there.
I myself took it upon myself this summer to go out probably about a dozen times to walk the streets and walk the alleyways. And I took one of our staff sergeants with me at all times, just to kind of advise people what it is that we kind of expected of our officers to be doing. And we also have a full-time community services officer, and her sole duties right now, because she's not performing other duties that she typically would have because of COVID, is to walk downtown. And I'm sure a lot of our business owners would have probably seen her. She probably would have walked into their establishments and presented herself. So we, like Darin said, and she said, we certainly are taking this seriously. We understand what people want from our service, and